The ice storm sweeping across the United States is already claiming the life of 34 people, leaving hundreds of thousands of homes and business without power. In Brazil, civil police thwart an extremist attack that planned to blow up a fuel truck near the Federal District Airport. Russia, President Vladimir Putin restated that Ukraine and its Western allies reject dialogue with Moscow. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Stay with us. In the United States, a severe ice storm swept across the country on Christmas Eve, killing about 34 people and leaving hundreds of thousands of homes and business without power. The extreme weather caused highway accidents and paralyzed the Buffalo International Airport in New York State, leaving a total of 1,416 domestic and international flights canceled on Sunday. The scale of the storm, which tracked from the Great Lakes near Canada to the Rio Grande River at the Mexican border, was unprecedented and knocked out power to residents from Maine to Seattle. Many U.S. citizens were stranded in their own cars as there were emergency crews. Chilean authorities confirmed on Sunday that the fire that broke out 3 days ago in the city of Viña del Mar is under control, although not completely extinguished. Minister of the Interior, Carolina Toja, said there is no direct threat to the residents in the affected area and its surroundings, which is why the alert was changed from red to yellow. The government officials said that there are still hot spots and so teams are still working in the zone. It was also confirmed that on Sunday the balance of the blaze was still 2 dead, 67 injured and 267 houses damaged. The National Forestry Corporation, on the other hand, reported that the fire has devastated an area of 111 hectares. The blaze started in the hills of Viña del Mar and spread through ravines favored by the strong gusts of wind until it reached populated areas of mostly low-income residents. And the civil police in Brazil arrested on Sunday a man who was planning to blow up a fuel truck near Brasilia's international airport. Police sources identified the arrested man as Jorge Souza, a business person who claimed to be a Bolsonarista. Souza is said to have requested and frequented the camp in front of the army headquarters, where dozens of radical Bolsonaristas were asking the military to intervene to prevent President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from coming to power. The police detailed that Souza confessed to have had an intention of generating chaos. The arrest comes a week before the inauguration on January the 1st, when Brasilia will be armored to receive dozens of heads of state and a crowd that intends to celebrate the return of the leftist government to power.
He lives in Para and came precisely to participate in the demonstrations at the general headquarters, right? And that's what they call him. And he's part of this movement in support of the current president, right? To the current president, according to them. It is an ideological mission, but it got out of control. And the police authority, especially here in Brasilia, will take all necessary measures and will arrest anyone who attempts against the democratic rule of law, especially with threats and especially now with bombs. This is something that never existed in Brasilia.
In Brazil, Attorney General of Sao Paulo, Mario Luis Sarrubo, filed a request to annul the pardon granted by outgoing President Jair Bolsonaro to law enforcement officers found guilty of the Carandiru prison massacre in 1992. On Saturday, Sarrubo asked the Ministry of Justice authorities to declare the measure unconstitutional, as it favors the ex-officials responsible for one of Brazil's bloodiest episodes of law enforcement violence. In his official statement, the Attorney General emphasized that the presidential pardon violates both national and international laws and human rights agreements. The Carandiru massacre occurred in October 1992 when military police stormed the Carandiru penitentiary following a prison riot and killed 111 inmates. In El Salvador, hundreds of soldiers and police continue to close communities in the capital and other cities as part of the government's plan to fight gangs. President Nayib Bukele reported via Twitter that over 1,000 military and 130 police officers closed a community recognized as one of the areas with highest drug trafficking activity in El Salvadoran capital. According to the president, the community of Tutunixapa in San Salvador has been completely blocked off since last Saturday morning. This is done in order to capture the criminals that still remain in that community. The policy has been criticized by social movements claiming that law enforcement officers frequently make arbitrary arrests of innocent citizens. Now we move on to other topics. The government of Peru announced reparations or solidarity support for the families of those who lost their lives during the protest, after a turbulent week in which 28 demonstrators were killed as military and police repression violently escalated across the country. The Minister of Justice and Human Rights, José Tello, said that the President, Dina Boluarte, and the Prime Minister, Luis Alberto Otárola, ordered the creation of a multi-sectoral commission to look into the issue of reparations or solidarity support. He specified that the commission will be made up of delegates from different ministries, civil society, the National Human Rights Coordinator, and 2 representatives of the victims' families. On the other hand, in her Christmas message, Dina Boluarte stated that it is difficult for her to wish happy holidays due to the current situation the country is going through. She also indicated that she will have liked to start her transition government without these human losses, for which she sent her condolences to the relatives of the deceased. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin denounced during a press conference the West's rejection of dialogue with Moscow. The Russian head of state said on Sunday that Moscow is ready to negotiate with all the parties involved in the conflict and pointed out that the decision depends on the West and Kiev, as they are the ones who refuse to do so. President Putin also pointed out that his government is acting properly in the interests of national interests and the welfare of the citizens. The Russian president also said that the West seeks to divide Russia and the Russian people. However, Putin said every Russian citizen is ready to sacrifice everything for the interests of the homeland.
I believe we're acting in the right direction. We're defending our national interests, the interests of our citizens, our people. I reiterate, we don't have any other choices but to protect our citizens. However, we are prepared to negotiate some acceptable outcomes with all the participants of this process, but it's their business. It is not us who refuse talks, it's them.
In Germany, recent polls show that 45% of respondents are against supplying Ukraine with Leopard 2 tanks, which are considered an icon of the country's military technology. According to a poll commissioned by Deutsche Press Agentur, Germany's largest news agency and one of the largest in the world, Germans are largely opposed to supplying Ukraine with such tanks. The other side is divided between 33% in favor and 22% who do not speak out. This division is also reflected in the three-party coalition that governs the country, with the Social Democrats, led by the Chancellor Olaf Scholz, denying the delivery of these tanks, but with the Greens in particular and the Liberals, to a lesser extent, in favor of meeting President Zelensky's specific demand. In Russia, the armed forces announced the establishment of a layered defense system to protect the strategic Zaporizhia region. The deputy governor of that province reported on Sunday that Russian military engineers have built a line of defense to prevent peace disturbance. These maneuvers and measures fortify several areas, which will allow a greater defense capability in case of attacks from Ukraine. That territory was admitted to the Russian Federation on the basis of the results of a referendum held in late September, in which the yes vote for union obtained a solid majority of votes. The Russian government signed a decree for the purchase and delivery of 25,000 tons of wheat to the people of Cuba as part of a donation of humanitarian aid to the largest of the Antilles. According to the resolution, Russian authorities allocated more than 800 million rubles to the Ministry of Emergency for the purchase and delivery of the grain to Cuba. The decree details that some 469 million rubles will be used only for the purchase of the grain, while more than 300 million rubles will be designated for the delivery of the shipment by sea, with the help of the Foreign Ministry. The approved budget is part of the humanitarian aid that will be sent to the Caribbean nation between this year and 2023. Kurdish organizations took to the streets of Paris on Saturday to protest after 3 members of that community were killed by racist gunmen at the Kurdish Cultural Central. The demonstration broke out in the French capital, rejecting what the Kurdish community considered a terrorist attack. The police forces threw tear gas and sound bombs at the demonstrators. Local media reported 12 police officers were injured in the clashes. In the United Kingdom, members of the Rail and Maritime Transport Workers Union officially went on strike in a dispute over wages, jobs and working conditions. Trains stopped running at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve across the country, affecting the plans of millions of people trying to reach their destinations for the Christmas holidays. Network Rail offered the railroad union a 5% wage increase this year, but the union is demanding a 7% increase. The public transport stoppage in the country is expected to continue until Tuesday. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The United Nations rejected the Afghan Taliban government's decree preventing women from working in non-governmental organizations and warns that this measure jeopardizes international aid to the country. A press release issued by the organization pointed out that any such order or decree violates the most fundamental rights of women and is contrary to humanitarian principles. According to the text, the UN will try to approach the Taliban leadership to learn in detail about the new decree, which comes along with the veto on women's university education, approved less than a week ago. The controversial order issued by the Taliban Finance Ministry calls on all NGOs to dismiss their female female employees on the grounds that they are not complying with Islamic laws. Ethiopia's Health Minister Lia Tedesi's said on Sunday that Tigray is receiving essential health and living supplies, as aid access has been gradually opening up since fighting between government and the regional forces eased earlier last month. During an exclusive interview with China's Central Television, the Ethiopian minister said that so far supplies worth nearly $4.5 million have been delivered to the region. Tedesi's also said that the government has sent medical professionals to Tigray to help its 10 hospitals and the 24 health centers resume operations. Ethiopia, Africa's second most populous nation, has seen a devastating conflict between government-allied troops and the forces loyal to the Tigray People's Liberation Front since November 2020, which left thousands dead and millions in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. A cessation of hostilities was signed on November the 2nd.
Since this humanitarian access has been resumed, a total of worth 240,815,203 birr and 89 cents per worth of life-saving pharmaceutical supplies were delivered to the Tigray region. Out of this, of course, around 112 million are vaccines and related consumables. We expect to continue to do more because the need is, as you can see, huge. And based on our recent tentative plan, which will continue to be refined, the phase one of the next 6 months response is estimated to require around 7.8 billion birr. So the response, the resource mobilization and working with partners will continue.
Nigeria's central bank reversed the policy that drastically limited cash withdrawals in the African nation after public outcry. According to banking authorities, a new limit 5 times higher than before was established. In that sense, individuals' withdrawals were raised from $225 to about $1,125, while the limit for legal entities was raised from $1,100 to $11,000. The bank assured that this measure seeks to control excess cash and promote electronic payments through the national bank's digital currency, internet banking, or other alternative means. The Iraqi government presented a proposal to hold dialogues between Iran and Egypt in order to restore relations between the two countries. During an interview, the Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian stated that the proposal was made by Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, whom he met within the framework of a regional conference held this week in Amman, the capital of Jordan. The Iranian Foreign Minister said that he welcomed the idea, adding that al-Sudani will take action in the coming weeks to facilitate such talks. Iran broke off relations with Egypt after 1979 with the rise of the Islamic Revolution and following the peace treaty between Egypt and the State of Israel. However, in recent years, the country has shown its willingness to improve said relations by resolving their differences on various issues. In Egypt, an archaeological mission discovered on Sunday a building from the Ptolemaic period, a Roman bath, and several objects during excavations at the Temple of Esna in Luxor. According to the authorities of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, in the works carried out in the back of the sanctuary, the experts found the remains of a hood that was an extension of the temple during ancient times. They also detected the remains of a circular building of red bricks and the foundations of another with adobe walls, as well as the numerous ceramic vessels. The Temple of Esna was built during Roman times and was dedicated to the god Num, presented or represented as a man with a god's head. In the last 200 years, several researchers have brought to light various inscriptions engraved on the temple. South African authorities announced on Sunday that the death toll from Saturday's tanker explosion near Johannesburg has risen to 15. The accident occurred after an Infinity gas tanker carrying 60,000 liters of liquefied petroleum gas got stuck under a bridge in the residential area of Boxburg. Aside from the 15 casualties reported so far, at least 40 have been injured by the blast, of which 19 are in critical condition and other 15 are stable, but with seriously hurt. According to local reports, several houses and vehicles have been damaged by the explosion, including the nearby Tambo Memorial Hospital, from which patients had to be evacuated after part of the roof collapsed. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.